So in the next video we're going to work on the third exercise in our second exercise book, and that is this one here, the one that I gave you for homework. Now you can see that's what it should look like when it's finished. Here is the sketch. Unfortunately the hidden dimension here is 240. I can't really do anything about that. Now, getting this right is going to be dependent on you using guidelines in a smart way. So the most important guidelines that you need to set up to start with are this center line here and these two lines here, which are 450 apart. Now that's something which is quite similar to what we did for the previous exercise. So let's go back to SketchUp and do that. So taking my tape measure tool, I can now drag a guideline out, drag a guideline from here, from the red axis, and then from the one I just dragged out, make another one which is 450 away from it. So now I have those two center points, or those two guiding points, which are 450 apart from each other. So what I'm going to start with first is the actual circle on top, and I've got here one circle which is 240, one circle which is 160, and that of course then means that the thickness around the circle is going to be 80. So back to SketchUp, circle tool. This time I'm just going to do two separate circles. I'm not going to bother with the offset tool. So let's just type in 240. And for the smaller one, let's double check, it's 80, so it's 160. So there we are with our first parts of this shape. Now what we need to do is go back now and check. Now you've got quite a bit of detail down here, and it's really important that you pay close attention to it to get this correct. You can see here we have a center line down the middle, and we can see that the distance between here and here is 280. So we need two more guidelines to show us where the middle of these two legs are. So let's do that now. So 140 either side. So guideline, take it out from here by 140. Move another one out here, type in 140, and there, this and this now are the center of the two legs. What I can do now is then look at this dimension. This dimension tells me that the width of each of these legs is 80, which means I need to drag out another guideline, 40 either side of the center lines that I just drew. So 40 that way, 40 that way, which gives me a leg of 80. Now you can see that SketchUp starts to remember what you're doing if you do it a lot, and it automatically snaps then to 40 because it assumes you want to go to 40. So now I've got my center, I've got the centers of the two legs, and the legs are 80 wide, which means 40 either side of my center. Right, so let's go back to our drawing. So now we have the outlines of our legs, and what's that? That's what I'm going to draw next. So back to SketchUp, and this time I'm going to take my pencil tool. Now this just allows me to draw a line. You can also call it the line tool. And I need a line from that point intersection there down to this intersection here. So I'm going to start off just by clicking here. Now you've got to make sure you zoom in and check that you don't accidentally click on this point or this point, because that could be a problem. So from that intersection to that intersection, I also need a line from that intersection to, got to be careful here, zoom in, make sure you get the right intersection. There it is, that one there. I also need, and if you get this happening with your pencil tool, you can just hit the escape key on your keyboard and it'll go back to starting again. Click there. No, actually I don't need to click there, I need to click here at this intersection, go to that intersection, hit the escape key to get out, and from that point to that point. Right, so now I'm starting to build up the shape. All right, so I can now go back to my sketch and see what I need still to add. So I still need to add these radiuses at the bottom, and you can see from my drawing that the radius of those is 40 millimeters. So let's go back. Now for this I can use my 2-point arc again, and you can see if you look closely at the little icon that I'm drawing with, you can see it's asking me to draw the first point of my arc, the second point of my arc, and if you drag that arc out, then there's a certain point where it snaps and it tells you that it's a half circle. Now what should happen here is if I've drawn it correctly, once I define the third point of my arc, I should then automatically get the surface filling itself in, as you can see has happened. Let's just look at that again on the second leg. So click here to define the second point, and then drag out, making sure you're dragging along that line there, and you can see at a certain point, if you do it slowly, it'll snap into place, and you can see automatically if you click here it's going to be a half circle, and that's exactly what you want. And again, you can see because I've drawn accurately and because I've made sure all of my lines attached to intersections, I now have a pretty good shape. Now you can see if I go back to the sketch, you can see there's this bit in the middle that I don't need. So I can go back now and delete all the bits out of this drawing which shouldn't be there. So take my select tool, and I can now select that line there, hit the delete key, and that goes. If I delete that line, everything from the middle goes, and I also don't need that line which divides the shape up. So using guidelines again, I've now made this shape, which I now need to pull up to a height of 500. That's my final task. Type 500, make sure it's accurate, and there you can see is my final finished, accurately drawn shape.